We want to have a conversation about our identity mapping tool. It's a tool we've used with hundreds of clients, and it's taken on a bit of a life of its own. So its usefulness is different for different people, but we wanted to just tell some of the stories of this tool and make some sense together about who would want to use this and why.
Yeah. That sounds great.
Do you have a story of
Do you want?
a way that this tool has been used that you found meaningful?
Yeah, I have a couple of stories. The one that first comes to mind, let me give her a fake name. Ray. Okay. So Ray had been recently promoted to an executive position, and wanted lots of tips and tools for how to build her confidence. And we were sort of struggling. We were, each coaching session I was trying to share different tips or practices and tools, and it just really wasn't sticking or resonating. And then one day she said, "You have to understand, I'm a blue collar person walking into the boardroom." And I said, "Hang on, is it okay if we explore what that actually means to be a blue collar person?" What we discovered over time was she was holding this story of herself that having this blue collar background meant she wasn't prepared. She wasn't a badass in the way that her colleagues were, who had grown up with much more class privilege. And what we discovered in unpacking what it meant to be blue collar is it meant that she was incredibly resourceful. It meant that she was a hard worker. It meant that she was scrappy. She had grit. And so I noticed over the course of the conversation, Peter, it was amazing. In one conversation, and we've been coaching for some months, her body kind of language went from this to this. She got a little louder. She was resolute. She was joyful in a way. And it was really coming to, in fact, being blue collar means that she's actually better prepared for walking into the boardroom. And that was it was a really emotional experience for me. And it's why I think you and I partly do what we do, is to be in that moment with her and be able to help her understand herself in this different way, to recognize that this core identity is not a source of shame, it's a source of power. So that story, her story, and the honor that I feel and being able to be with her in that story will stay with me forever. And that's partly why, for me, identity mapping can be a game changer. It can be life-changing.
I see identity mapping as a starting place, because it takes some time to really connect to, okay, first, what are my identities? What are my stories around these identities? And what do those stories mean when it comes to how am I in relationship with other people? How am I in relationship to myself? How do I go about doing my work? What are the values or the habits that shape what I do every day? And so I think one of our fundamental beliefs is identity does shape so much of who we are, how we're in relationship with other people. And I think with intention, it is invisible in so many spaces in the world, especially workspaces, right? Like those spaces are about conforming rather than taking up space. And so what I love is, yes, the process of kind of getting the identities on the table through the identity map. And I think it does invite people to do that in a way that's a little different than other places I've been. So, or other tools that are out there. So I see tools that will say like, well, what's your race and what's your gender identity and what's your socioeconomic status? And our tool invites people to name those things. They're very important, but they also ask, we also ask through this tool, well, what are the identities that you claim that are important to you about how you show up as an adult? And also, what are the identities of the people who influence you? Just like really making visible, what are the identities that you carry and that others carry that are shaping your experience in the world. And it's just amazing some of the things that were invisible to people about themselves that I've seen become visible through either identity mapping or an equivalent process inside of a coaching session.